start things off in this song, we just have some hi-hats and some rim clicks. Remember, just move your stick up and down until you get a really nice, full, woody sound. That's going to be the best sound you can get. And then the pattern just goes like this. Pretty shortly after that, we just add in some kick drums right at the beginning of the 4 bars. As we're building up to that very first chorus, we start to get even busier on the kick drums, so the next 4 bars go like this. And then the last 4 bars of this verse, right before the chorus, we're just going to open up the hi-hats a little bit, get even busier on the kick drums, and we just have a tiny little fill right at the end. That brings us up to our chorus. Now this beat is going to be tricky if you haven't done it before, so what I would definitely recommend is just leaving out the right hand completely and just working on the snare drum and kick drums at first until you get kind of comfortable with it, and then you can work out how to get that crash cymbal back in over the top. I'll play the whole thing for you slowly, but just remember, if you need to, feel free to break it down. I can't tell for sure if there's some extra crash cymbals right on those snare drums at the end of the first bar. You could add them in if you want, but for now I'm just going to leave them out. Let me play the whole thing up to speed. Halfway through that chorus we have a fill that is pretty straightforward. It's just on the snare drums, but we're going to end right on the kick on the very last 16th note of the bar. That's just going to launch us back onto the snare drum so we can get back into the beat nice and easily. At the end of this first chorus, we just have a flam on beat 4. That takes us back into the verse, which is pretty much exactly the same as the first time through. There are a couple of little variations, so the first one is a little hi-hat sizzle right at the end of 4 bars, sounds like this. And then the other variation is we're just going to add in those quick little 16ths on the hi-hats a little bit later in the phrase and in 2 different spots. At the end of this verse, we have the exact same build-up on the kick drums that we did in the first verse, and then we're moving into the second chorus, which is exactly the same as the first chorus. The only change is, right at the end, we're just going to extend the beat out a little bit, and then we've got this big fill on the snare drum that has a couple of accents in it, so I'll show you how that goes now. fill brings us up to the bridge, and in the bridge we have a load of orchestral sounds going on. We can catch a lot of those on the acoustic kit, but it's not going to sound exactly the same. So mostly I'm just using the snare drum and the kick drum, and we have a pattern that goes like this. To get that nice drag at the front of the snare drum each time, ideally you want just 2 strokes controlled with your fingers. So you're kind of just dropping the stick for the first stroke and then catching it and picking it up with your fingers on the second stroke. If that's a bit tricky up to tempo though, you could just buzz it, and that's where you're just going to apply a bit of pressure with the stick straight into the head and get a nice buzz sound instead. We just use those 4 bars in the orchestral pattern for quite a while, then eventually the drums kind of fade out, everything fades out, and then as we build things back up, it's quite tricky to hear exactly what's going on. I think it might be 16th notes on the snare drum with a few kick drums building up and up and up and up and up until we hit this big fill going back into the chorus. So you could play something like this for the build up. I didn't work out exactly what's going on in that build up though, so if you have your own ideas, go for it. The fill coming back into our next chorus comes in on beat 2, and if you listen closely you can hear the chord change in the music, and that's where your beat 1 is, so it's nice and easy to count. 1. That takes us straight back into another chorus, just the same beat as we've already been using. The fill halfway through this chorus does change a little bit, and it sounds like this. At the end of that chorus, we have a really big build-up. We're on the snare drum for 2 bars, and then we move on to the toms for 2 bars. I couldn't hear clearly exactly what's going on, but I think what I've worked out sounds pretty good, so check it out, hopefully you like it. That giant fill brings us into our outro, which is a huge halftime section. There's a few syncopated kick drums which might be a bit tricky, but I'll take it slow, so hopefully that helps you work it out. And there we go, that brings us to the end of This Is War by 30 Seconds to Mars. Hopefully that polyrhythmic stuff in the chorus isn't too tricky for you, and just remember, if it is hard, just slow it right down, break it down, leave a piece out, just so that it makes it a bit easier for you, and eventually with practice, you'll definitely be able to get it. Hopefully the rest of the song makes sense as well. It is quite a powerful one to play along to, so I hope you have fun, happy practicing, I'll catch you at the next lesson.